Hi, and welcome to Ian Wallace's podcast, The Messed Up Counsellor. If you've seen some of the previous podcasts that I've done, it's mostly around human beings and how human beings interact and connect, and the books I've written about those subjects. What I want to explore today is something that affects us all, which whether we know it or don't know it, and things that kind of is becoming more of the front nowadays and people having conversations about, which is kind of diversity and difference. Now, we've always had conversations about diversity and difference, that's not new. But the kind of neurodivergent process is conversations now that we're having about how those differences are working within each person's world. And all human beings are different. We're not all the same. We never have been, obviously. But I suppose the more we engage with learning about the diversity and difference, how people see the world, work the world, interact with the world, the more we can engage with conversations that start making people realise that everybody's different in some way, shape or form. Our minds, our worlds, our experiences, our knowledge, how we work our world, how we see our world, comes from a whole range of different inputs. From ourselves, experiences we've had, or from media, learning, a whole range of things. For a lot of people, they just accept that's how people are. And some people don't accept how people are. They don't like how people are. They don't understand how people are. So I think the more we can understand people's differences, and the more we don't see them as a threat, as human beings. Things we don't understand, we tend to be very wary of. We tend to act in a very defensive way. So when we're looking at diversity and difference, it's really hard to get a sense of somebody else's world without that input, without knowledge, without understanding, because our world is our world. This is how the world works in our view. We look at it through what we say a lens. That lens is based on, as I've said, everything that's ever happened to us, really. So we take that as our first and formal process of understanding. Now, if, for example, as I've said in previous podcasts, I didn't have any kind of foreign food, as my dad used to call it, we would only have meat and two veg. So until I'd actually experienced something different, my world was meat and two veg. And when I see that difference, first Chinese meal I ever had, then there's a challenge on that world. Now that diversity and difference, the Chinese meal, made me understand the world differently by eating it, by looking at the menu, by a whole range of stimuli in the restaurant, chopsticks, a whole range of things that were different, that were challenging to start with, because I'd never experienced that, never understood it, never seen it, never learnt about it. So it was something that initially was fearful, never done that before. But eventually it became a normal process, and I didn't see it with fear or awkwardness or worries or concerns. And now I will eat virtually nearly any food on the planet, or any nationality of food on the planet, maybe. I draw the line at the stuff that comes out of I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here, obviously, but the process that we have with diversity and difference, we have to engage with a conversation. We have to engage with a curiosity about that. I had to walk up the steps of the Chinese restaurant. I had to be curious enough to make that connection, to want to actually see, try, understand. And that's where a lot of people don't. They don't do it because they're bad people. They just do it because it seems such a big change, such a big difference. And I don't know whether or not I can cope with that difference. I don't know if a Chinese meal will make me sick, for example. So I have to be curious enough to ask questions. I have to be curious enough to think about, explore, try to get a sense of what that other process is, that difference is. As we do that as human beings, we have to overcome our own fears, our own prejudices. And prejudices usually are fears, or there's a fear factor in there somewhere. So I have to have the motivation to want it, to understand it, to engage with it. And then that will change my process. Not straight away. And it didn't. You know, the first time I had a Chinese meal, I had fuyong, which is omelette. Which I had omelettes as a English pub restaurant process previously at home. So omelettes were a big, big change or a big, big deal. But they would have components in that omelette that I hadn't had before, such as peppers. So all those kind of things made it different. So it didn't look too big a step to have fuyong once I realised it was an omelette. But that led me to think about having curries, led me to think about having rice, led me to think about having all sorts of different food combinations. So I have to want to, or think I want to engage with that process. I have to be open to change. And a lot of people are not open to change. But if we can give people an understanding of that difference, that diversity, culturally or, whatever we're looking at, then that may help them to engage with it, or at least think about engaging with it first of all. So because our brains are different, because our brain is our world, you work your world through your brain. It's where all the fingers move and everything happens through your brain. So in my brain, I now know, didn't when I was young, that I am dyslexic. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have a problem with that. I'll freely tell people that. I'm not embarrassed about it or shamed about it in any way, shape or form. But when I was younger, when I was growing up, then that wasn't necessarily as easy a process for me to do. So I always believed, and I say this in the book, I always believed I was thick. I wasn't intelligent. Now, in some senses, I am more intelligent than others, and in some senses, less intelligent than others. That doesn't fill me with any issues nowadays. Yes, I have difficulty with grammar. I have difficulty with English. Spell checker is a godsend. And grammar checker is even more so. But I come from days when those things weren't around. And so now I can use tools in order to help that process. But it means sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes I put the wrong word in. Sometimes the words do not make sense. And that process hindered me in some senses when I was going through school education. Came up with very little in the way of academic certificates. But I learned that I can learn through doing things, by copying, by seeing, by checking things out. So my brain works differently to some other people. And that's not wrong or right, that's just different. So diversity in that brain means that now I realise a lot of stuff that I never realised when I was a kid, never realised when I was growing up. But I now know that actually that process of dyslexia has benefits. It has positives. Yes, it has negatives as well, but it has positives. I realise now the way I learn is that if I'm doing something new, my brain sees the end result, the completed task, what that is, and it works backwards to get there. Most people work in a learning process of going forward. I've already gone forward and then I deconstruct it. Now that means in my dyslexic world, with learning components, ideas, understanding, I will be very good at solution-focused work because I see the solution, I see the end result, and then I work backwards in how I get there. Now, for a lot of people, I work that really quickly. I'm not saying I'm fantastic at that stuff. I'm not. But in my world, what I do, I learn that process fairly quickly. So I see end products and then I work backwards, and that gets me there faster. So for some people, that can be really frustrating. Well, you haven't done A, B, C, D. You've done A, Z, Y, M, whatever it is, going backwards. Dyslexic, but I can't do that. It's one aspect of dyslexia. I'm not good with letters and words. So that process means that I have a different ability from that dyslexia. Now, some ways it hampers me. I don't like doing academia. I can't read books as easy as other people. I certainly can't pull theory back in academic worlds or people who've written books or any of those kind of stuff. I was told when I was very young in school, you're lazy or you're thick, basically. I'm not lazy and I'm not thick. I just work differently. But in those days, not like now, unfortunately. Now there's a lot more understanding around it. But in those days, there was basically very little. If you couldn't learn the way the teacher told you should learn, then pretty much you were thick. We don't learn that way, I'm afraid. So that process means that my difference, my diversity of brain, helps me in some ways but hinders me in others. So where it hinders me, I don't get upset about it, I just use tools. Where it helps me, I use those skills and abilities to advance and enhance my world and my life. So when you're looking at diversity and difference, yes, there is aspects which will not be the same as other people. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it, you just do it differently. So I class people as differently abled. I don't class people as disabled, because anybody's disability has an ability. And so that ability we need to find. We need to give them that understanding of that ability. That's why people have massive experience, knowledge, intuitive way of doing things, as we call it, without learning, because they see that process. People will see things differently, but that doesn't mean to say they're good or bad or right or wrong. It's just different. So everybody's brain, everybody's neural processes work differently. If we can enhance that difference as a skill, an ability, then they can lead massively rewarding lives. But if we see that as a negative process, a disability, then they only look on the negative stuff and they never actually possibly grow. So we need to work out what that person's understanding is and their ability, their skill, and enhance that. And don't worry, concern ourselves about that stuff that they can't do. So when I went to university, about the age of 50, I had to go through an academic process to get in. I had to do an academic process of understanding, and that's where I learned I was dyslexic, because they did an assessment for me. Then the tutors, the people who were giving me information, had to change how they gave me information in order for me to understand it. So they had to work with my process of learning instead of their process of learning. And that adaptation made it easier for me to get stuff. I would say to my tutors, don't ask me to read anything. Give me examples. Give me an understanding in life where I can see that thing playing out, and I'll get it. I will get it if you do that for me. But I won't get it if you ask me to read a book, because it will take me ages to read a book. Absolute ages. I've probably read, you'll get a chapter or a paragraph of a book, and I might have to read it 5-6 times to get it. That's an awful long period of time. But if you give me an example, pretty much I'm spot on with it. I'll learn it, I'll understand it, I'll be able to work with it. But it has to be something that I can see that happens, not something I read. So my skill, if you like, and I'm not the only person who has this skill, is I can enhance that skill, that awareness, that understanding. I can use my intuitive self, as what they call nowadays somatic. It means you're feeling the things through your body. I can use that intuitive self to interact with another person and be more aware of where they are, their fears, worries, and concerns. That doesn't mean I'm a mind reader, I'm not. I just use that tool of sense in a different way to other people. And that gives me lots of positives. It gives me, as with everything, there's always a positive and a negative application. It means in order to understand that, I have to feel that. If I feel that, sometimes it hurts me. But it doesn't hurt me because of me, it hurts me because of the information I'm getting. But I can suss people out, I can check people out quicker. I can understand their world quicker because I'm getting different pieces of information that come together to give me that picture, give me that understanding. So those are the things that I've learnt about myself over the years. Now, before I started doing the counselling world, I pretty much was like everybody else. I didn't even know I had those skills and abilities necessarily. So the awareness, the understanding I've got about myself and how I work my world, and that I am dyslexic, has allowed me to interact with a process of learning, understanding, knowing why I do what I do and how I do that in order to help me move forward and change. So if you have a different way of looking at the world, don't see that as you being wrong. Just see that as you being different. And it will give you benefits, obviously, but it will give you things that you can't do as well as other people. But if we focus on the stuff we can't do, then it will allow us to develop and grow. So we have to focus on the things we can do. Some people will be able to write music without ever looking at any learning about music. They'll be able to play a piano without actually being taught. Those are processes that are massive skills and abilities. And that process means that we get music, we get something that we can enjoy. They haven't learnt it through a formal sense, but they've learnt it in their own way. And they've used that. And it works. And that gives them lots of skills and abilities. And lots of possibilities of earning money, having a lifestyle, having all those things. Because they've overcome it. And they've not focused on what they can't do. They've enhanced what they can do. And that process means that they can move forward. Now I can write books. Not necessarily grammatically correct books, as people tell me, but I can write. I can use words, I can use language, I can use tools, I can use, grammar checker, I can use spell checker. I can use all these kind of formats to enable me to be able to converse and write a book. Now, if you'd have told me that when I was 40, maybe even 45, I would have been completely flabbergasted that I could do that. But I learned a way of doing it. And I now use that way of doing it in order to make it happen. Now, if I hadn't have done that, if I hadn't have learned, if I hadn't have seen there was a different way of doing something, then I probably would never have written any books. Because the fear of writing, the fear of being looked at, the fear of people analysing my words, basically kind of challenging that, would have stopped me probably. But I overcome that fear, which was a great fear, to be fair. And I enhanced the way I did things, and then I was able to complete that task. So for anybody that's listening to this, watching this, however you're interacting with this, just be mindful that everybody's different. Everybody's unique. Everybody has skills and abilities. But some things you're not going to be good at. Don't worry about the stuff you're not good at. Enhance the stuff you are good at. Challenge yourself not to stay in that box. I was in a box of academia. I would not go into any tests, any processes before I challenged that at university. But once I challenged it, I was able to make me different, grow, develop, become been much more comfortable with myself, because I didn't believe I was thick. I didn't believe I was illiterate. I didn't believe I couldn't do something. I actually can, and I did. And okay, yeah, people may look at it and they may say, right, okay, yeah, they're not really good books because they're not written from a grammatical point of view. They're not referenced. They're not academic books. No, they're not. They're just me spouting out some words. But hopefully the words make sense. Hopefully the words help people to see things differently, to connect to that diversity and difference, which is a massive field of difference. There is so many. We're not even touching the surface of what people's differences are. We're finding more by being able to kind of scan the brains and look at what people do and tasks they do and how they react to certain stimuli. But we're really not able to look at everybody's differences and everybody's unique aspect. And that's the thing. We're all unique. Enjoy your uniqueness. Enhance your uniqueness. Don't worry about stuff. Just get on with it. I'm Ian Wallace. I'm the Messed Up Counsellor. Take care. Enjoy.